I'm Brian Carpenter, host of Fresh Air at 5, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Miletto. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. With Dr. Steve Miletto.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today it's just me talking to you about something I've been burning in my mind lately. And this is called Lessons I Learned from Jobs Before I Started My Education Career That Have Impacted My Career in Education. Get it? Yeah. So how about you? Did you ever have a job or two that you had maybe starting in high school and continued on in college and just before you became a teacher, or even maybe while you started that first teaching job? What about it? Let me make sure that we're on the same page when we talk about first jobs. So this is what I'm thinking about. One, you worked for someone other than your family, okay? Two, you actually got a paycheck, so an official paycheck, not like $5 slid to you underneath the table by your dad or your uncle or something. So do you have that experience? Did you do something like that fit those categories, and you would say you had that job in high school? And what I'm introducing to you is a short series that will be about a couple different jobs that I had over time before I became a teacher that impacted me as a teacher and then an administrator and principal, RESA director, and so forth. So what I'm talking about is I had my first job when I was in high school. It was during the summer, and I was hired at a grocery store. And if any of you grew up in Florida or lived in Florida for a time being, I don't know where else they might have existed, but this was a store chain called Pantry Pride. Yes, it was. This was a pretty good sized store in our community, and enjoyed this job that I'm going to get. So I applied for a job, and I became a bagger. Now, in case you don't know grocery store lingo, a bagger bag groceries plus more, all right? And so let's talk about that job description just a little bit, and then from there I'm going to take you into this whole thing about the lessons that I learned that impacted me down the road. So the bagger was basically a jack of all trades, and you, first of all, learned how to bag groceries. Now, if you don't know it, and if you're good, however someone bags your groceries at a grocery store, or you actually go to a place where you have to do it yourself, it's there is a rhyme or reason to how you should be packing your groceries. And I'm a little concerned today because when I go in some of these grocery stores and I see, like the bread being put in the same bag with cans of soup or the eggs put in with the cans of soup or something like this. It's like, whoa, time out there. Okay. There's a reason why those don't go together. And unless I want to start sounding like that commercial for that company where it says, are you turning into your parent? Yeah, sometimes I'd like to stop the bagger and say, okay, please don't put those together. All right. Matter of fact, I'll do it for you. But I digress. Let's move on. So in this grocery store, as a bagger, you not only bag groceries, and you had to go through a class. The manager taught this class on how he wanted you to bag those groceries, and you need to make sure that you did it that way. Well, there's other stuff that you did. And some of the stuff that you might have to do just centered around all that, might center around everything that a grocery store does. And I'm going to be more specific here in just a second. Matter of fact, in my life, I don't know if you know this or not, when you sign a contract in a school setting, usually there's a Rule 24 or paragraph number 12 or something like this. And for some reason, they're even numbers. They're like 12 and 24, which basically say something. And not only are you bagger, not only you're a teacher, but you're also any other assigned duties or any duties additionally assigned to you, that type of thing. And that's 12 and 24 or whatever the number was on some professional contract you signed down the road. They were always about, there's lots of other jobs you could do. We couldn't name them all. So just know that there are other things you need to do besides what we listed. So with that being said, let's talk about one of my main jobs, all right? Or let's talk about the list of main jobs that I did as working in that grocery store. So number one, I bagged groceries. And, depending on the time of day, especially on the weekends, we were one of those areas where people would come in early in the morning on a Saturday as they're going out fishing, and they'd come in and buy some groceries. They would load up on stuff to take with them to the beach. The beach was about 45 minutes away from there, and they'd load up on all kinds of stuff like that. So Saturday mornings, that place was packed, and so they really needed lots of baggers there then, all right? So going along with bagging groceries was getting carts. Yeah, getting carts, people take them out in the parking lot, they put them in their little corrals, or they just leave them wherever they were parked. And so you have to go gather those carts up. Something else that you were responsible for was something called spot mopping. That's right. Spot mopping had to happen throughout your shift. And the idea was that there would be a bucket. You go put in some new water and soap and get your mop and go around the store and look in that vinyl, because there'd be different areas where for some reason a little spot had developed, and you'd use that to clean that up so the floor looked nice and shiny. And so then let's move on from that to straightening shelves, because some shelves would get all messy because people would kind of sort through these shelves to try and find something, the particular flavor, the particular soup they were looking for, whatever it was. A lot of times people just move stuff out of the way or put it on the floor, put it on the ground, and forget to put it back. And so they'd make kind of an interesting mess. And then something else was restocking items. From time to time, you might run out of something during the day. Now, there were stockmen that came in late at night, and they stocked the shelves and stuff like this. As a bagger, you weren't considered one of them. You didn't get paid the amount they got paid to stay up basically all night and reload the shelves. But as a bagger, you went around, and as you're spot mopping and doing this, that, and the other, you'd check out the aisles, and you'd see if there were some things that needed restocking. And so you go back there and find those boxes of items and bring them out and restock those shelves. Something else that was part of what we did is helping customers. That's right. You got to have a friendly face and be able to help them, because you never knew what someone might ask you. And sometimes you just needed to ask the customer the same thing. I'll go into more detail about this in just a minute, but the same sort of thing goes true for the idea that being helpful doesn't just mean that you wait for someone to ask you, but you ask them, "Hey, can I help you, sir?" One of the other aspects of it was helping team members. In other words, you're not just standing around going, "Hey, that's not my job." Instead, you'd say, "Hey, can I help you with that? Can I help you with that project? Can I help you move that? Can I help you fill that?" That type of thing. Something else that became part of the job is that you were expected to be on time, because people were depending on you. Some people were getting off work as you were coming on work. And, and sometimes they had more people working during these hours, like that Saturday that I described to you, as opposed to some days during the week when you would come in later in the afternoon or something like that. Something else that I learned was be flexible. The idea that they might need you to do more work over here. They might need you to work with this department over there, like, from the produce to the KitchenAid aisle to the butcher's counter, that type of thing. So you just needed to be available just in case they needed you to go help out in a different part of the store. And so you had to be flexible, not get an attitude, and going with that attitude thing is you had to be positive, because sometimes things would happen during the day and, it just frustrating. Someone would drop a bag of flour. Someone would drop a bag of sugar. It spills, and you got to clean that up. Sugar, by the way, that's a mess to clean up. And, there's just any number of things that might get you caught up in an attitude. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, where you're mad at the world and everything's bad. And therefore, when a customer asks you a question, you say, I haven't got time for you. Blah. Well, some of the stuff that I learned from being a bagger in a grocery store was that it's important to learn your job and do it well. And let's talk about these things that I learned from being a bagger that impacted my career down the field in education, because I always learned them. And I want to tell these in little short stories. So one of the things that I was told from the very beginning when I started the grocery store is you have to understand that you never have nothing to do. I mean, they made that clear. You do not stand around. You do not go hang out at the water cooler. You do not go back into the break room. You always have something to do. And they showed you what always meant, right? So when I went to this grocery store, I was assigned a trainer, and that trainer worked with me on certain concepts of the job. And one of those concepts was you never need to be bored because there's plenty of stuff to do. So don't stand around and think you have nothing to do. You always have something to do. So that's something important to keep in mind, is that one of the lessons I learned is you always have something to do. And that's important to think about because, there's times when we think, I'll put it off. I don't need to do this now. I can do it later. Well, in the grocery store, you always had something to do. Let's talk about that for a minute. So let's say that it's not that busy right now, and so you were helping bag groceries, and they don't need you anymore. So what's some of those things that you always could take a look at? Well, number one, go out in the parking lot and look for carts. Put the carts together, bring them forward. Because the carts, they were always left all over the place. People would run into them, or the wind would move them and make them run into another car or something like this, that type of thing. So one of the things you could always do is go out in the parking lot, go put as many carts together. And by the way, that's one of the things we always did. There's a competition to see how many carts you can get in one haul to go in and not lose them and not let them rip apart, that type of thing where you couldn't keep it together as a whole thing, because you needed to bring it down onto the ramp and then pull it up onto the ramp and put them all together at the front of the grocery store. Yeah, so if you felt like you were bored and didn't have anything to do, you could always go into the parking lot and gather up the rest of the carts. So to go along with that, something else that I was expected to do was, you heard me mention spot mopping. Right, they called it that. It's called spot mopping because you're walking around through the grocery store with you got the bucket on wheels that you've put some new water in, hot water, by the way. Not only hot water, it also has new soap in it. So you had to clean it out before that because you didn't want to be walking around spot mopping with dirty water and no soap. And it's cold. Yeah, that could cause a mess, all right? And you have to keep that in mind because today in education, if you oversee custodians, you got to make sure that they're doing the same thing, that they're changing out the mop water, that they're using new water, and that they're using hot water as well if they're doing something like this. But I digress. Let's go back to, this is a lesson that I learned then. You could always spot mop because you walk around and there were always spots someplace, and it was just that, someone might spill something or someone might, drop some droplets off their soda cup or whatever it is they brought in, and that would hit the tile floor, and then as more people walked over it, the dirt off their shoes would gather, and suddenly you got this series of spots that you need to get clean. And usually they're pretty easy to clean, but always have something to do, and spot mopping was one of those things. Well, one of my favorites was straightening shelves, because you'd be surprised what people do in a grocery store with making a mess on the shelves. I mean, because that's what they would do. They'd take the shelves and they search for what they specifically wanted, especially the soup aisle. The soup aisle always needed straightening. And that was a huge lesson for me in the grocery store, because the soup aisle always needed straightening because people were looking for that exact can of that type of soup and that flavor, and they would put some of them on the floor. They would push them away from each other. They would just make a whole mess out of these cans. As they took cans off the shelf, that means that it also needed to be reshelved. So not only did it need to be straightened, it needed to be a new product put on the shelves. And so that was something that you could do that would take up a lot of time, because they had a specific way in which the cans went on the aisle. You had to have the labels face out, and so many, they went so many deep and so many across, and certain brands were on certain parts of the aisle and other brands were on another part of the aisle. The part on the shelf the same way. It's like, but you could spend a lot of time there making sure that you were straightening the soup aisle. One of the other aspects that I had with this, when you think about you always have something to do, you could always help customers. And part of that is you're walking around and you ask somebody, as you're going to spot mop, or you're going to go get carts, or you're going to go bag groceries, or they need you on an aisle for something that needs a cleanup. But you see somebody who's walking, looking, and you say, "Excuse me, sir or ma'am, can I help you?" And that's one of the things that they taught us, is that just ask. Don't ignore them. Ask them if you can help them. Not only help the customers, but help team members. You look at them and you say, "Hey, I know you're putting that thing together over there." Or maybe that thing is a display. Maybe that is a certain way you're going to stack the fruit this time, or something like that. Or the cans of tuna. Or maybe it has to do with cleaning up. And you just say, "Hey, can I help?" And that's important. I put in my list, be on time. That was a huge part of it, because someone was depending on you to get there so they could leave. Or they needed more people at a certain time, so they needed you there then so you could be ready to go out and help on the floor, depending on what it is that they needed you for that day. Maybe they needed more baggers. Maybe they needed more help in the, taking care of keeping up with the carts and things like this, or tearing down boxes and stuff. There's any number of things that fell under that category of, be on time so we can take care of what we need to take care of. Ultimately, two very key issues that came to be part of this job as a bagger were be flexible, which means that you didn't, just because they had a lot of people there and they needed baggers, they may have something more important for you to do because they need you over in some aisle because someone, dropped 5 jars of spaghetti sauce, and that is a mess. If you've never cleaned up spaghetti sauce in a grocery store, yeah, it's like someone really is hating on your world. That was a trip cleaning that up, but someone had to clean it up, and you need to be able to do it and do it in a good, quick way, and be very flexible that that's what they're going to ask you to do instead of come up to do the bagging at that time. Well, to go with that and everything else, one of the most important lessons I learned is that you had to be positive. And it's hard to sometimes. And believe me, you're talking to this guy right here who, I have those difficulties with being positive when things go wrong multiple times in a row. And you're like, I don't know if you've ever seen the Flintstones, but Fred Flintstone likes to say things, whatever sound effects you want to replace instead of the words the character should be saying type of thing. But the point is that no matter what, you try and keep a smile and be positive and do your best to overcome whatever that negativity is that's trying to win out top of you. So these are lessons that I learned while I was at the grocery store. So let me identify them and narrow it down just a little bit, because these are jobs I had, and 2 important lessons, very important lessons that impacted me forever to this very day. 1, when you think you're all done, you still have something to do. You always have something to do. Number 2, be positive. And be positive means that not only do you work to have a smile on your face, but you're helpful. You ask people, "May I help you?" Your team members, the shoppers in the grocery store. You ask, "Can I help you? Hey, I'm Steve. Is there anything I can help you find?" Ah, cool. And then you help them, right? Don't walk away. That would be bad. But be positive. So you always have something to do, and be positive. So let's talk about that in a school setting. So as a teacher, you have to be flexible. You have to be positive. You have to be thinking about, there's some humor in some of this stuff here, because what you got to do is you got to understand you're working with kids. Along with that comes their parents and guardians, and you need to find the bright spot in all the stuff, because teaching is fun. It can be difficult and demanding, but it requires you to be positive, to find that smile, put it on your face, and figure out how to be helpful. Also, as a teacher, if you think you're done, there's so much stuff you can still do. Some of it has to do with grading. Much of it has to do with reading some of the stuff that you've put off that you should have read. A lot of it has to do with planning for the next day or the next week or the next month. Some of it has to do with, straightening up your room, cleaning up your room, putting things away, filing. Yeah, you've always got something to do. So 2 lessons that I learned from working in a grocery store as a bagger that have impacted me all my life is be positive, and you've always got something to do. So what do you think? Do you have something that you have learned from a first job? Do you have a first job that meets my criteria? Where you work for someone other than your own family and you received an official paycheck. So were there any lessons that you learned that impact you in your career? What do you think? Did you learn, if so, what were those lessons? I think that it's important for high schoolers and college students to get a job and create those experiences that will impact them throughout their lives. And even though some of them might be negative, they're very helpful. Some of those negative just as much as the positive are. And I got to tell you that without those experiences, working with a boss, receiving a paycheck, doing work for a paycheck, learning what it's like to be helpful, or what it's like when someone, you get in an argument with somebody that's on your team that you shouldn't be arguing with. What's this all about? There's so many lessons that, like with me, my first high school job, being that bagger in a grocery store, helped me deal with things that were to come that I only got a glimpse of. But 2 of the most important lessons I learned from being a bagger in that grocery store: 1, be positive, and 2, when you think you're done, you're not. There's so much more to do. So get to it. Thanks for listening. I'd love it if you let me know if you had a first job, what it was, and what you learned from it that may be impacting you still today. Hey, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you helped out the podcast. How could you do that, you say? Here are 3 ways. 1, you could tell a friend and share links. 2, you could go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, you could click on the link on my website homepage where it says Buy Me a Coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. Thanks so much. That would be so cool. You are awesome. Hey, you have been listening to Teaching Learning Leading K12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching Learning Leading K12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.